At every level of creation, there are these vibratory scales, at every level. And this creation is then expressed through human physiology, down through the nervous system with its spine, where each of the 33 vertebrae represent a particular tonality, tone, particular pitch, particular note. So in other words, the whole creation is seen not as just haphazard, random appearance where this is illusion, where this is real. This is now another conversation. The whole creation is seen as that shimmering pool of sound, but not just chaotic shimmering pool of sound, it's orchestrated sound. Well, apparently everything is vibration. Everything is a shimmering pool of sound. Apparently everything is vibration, everything is that, frequencies. So there is interesting confluence that took place somehow in, let's say, the past 100 years of what happened in the sciences, particularly in the quantum physics, quantum mechanics. 100, I'm saying it's a bit more than that now. We, 2023 now, and the quantum physics began at the beginning of the 20th century. So it's just over 100 years, where the total reevaluation of how a universe was viewed prior to that took place. Remarkable reevaluation, nothing short of extraordinary. Not only extraordinary, it's bewildering, mind-bending, and actually incomprehensible. I'm not going to go back to what the bleep do we know. Most of you have watched it, it's fun. There's some criticisms were particularly on the part of those who took part in or added their voice. They didn't like the way it was trimmed, the way it was assembled, because they felt that some of the messages that they were particularly emphasizing were monitored, or rather modified to fit the narrative. You know what I'm talking about, right? What the bleep do we know? Gosh, it's just now growing its beard now, getting gray, that film. Like, just watched it yesterday, seems. What was striking, not about that film, but what was striking is that 100 years have passed, but we're still catching up on the whole in terms of a true evaluation and a true value of what the era of quantum brought. And what's horrifying, to which I tried to speak very recently, I think in Vienna, at the beginning of this academic year, in September, that it is through the negative example that the proof of the pudding has been given a chance for it to be evaluated as a lived reality rather than something purely theoretical. And with the release of Christopher Nolan's latest film, Oppenheimer, I believe some of you have watched, right? Well, Christopher Nolan is one of the really serious movie makers, so I never miss his work. And I think his films ought to be watched. So much trash is being made these days. And it's a difficult subject because he chose this very, very controversial figure of a scientist who was appointed to create the atomic bomb that Oppenheimer is now forever stitched, as it were, in history. His name is associated with that. Even Sting's song, Oppenheimer's Deadly Boy, remember that? I'm talking about the singer, British singer, Sting. Entiendo? Are you following me, or am I completely gone somewhere? Departed. All right. So, yeah, the Oppenheimers, the Libo, right? So it's part of our culture, folk lore even. Oppenheimer, of course, did not create atomic bomb. He was put in charge of managing the project. The Los Alamos project that took place in Los Alamos, the project of creating the bomb was required to have someone who would be able to pull it off the ground. The atomic bomb was created, if anything, by Albert Einstein, bouncing off of what happened earlier in Germany, that breakthrough by young, brilliant physicist, right? You know who I'm talking about, Heisenberg, who is known for his uncertainty principle. But it was Heisenberg who has suggested that there is a possibility of splitting an atom. And the Albert Einstein, of course, was the first one who proposed that, and mathematically even was verified. So in fact, atomic bomb was created theoretically first, but nobody took it seriously. We know that Adolf Hitler never believed in such possibility until well into the, let's say, early 40s, when suddenly it became apparent that someone will be first. I'm not going to go there, no, don't worry, it's going to go back here. So, but what I'm trying to here illustrate is that through negative example, because the creation of the atomic bomb is a negative example, isn't it? It doesn't take sort of encyclopedic knowledge or refinement of the heart to understand that that was a horrific idea, horrifying, to create a bomb of mass destruction deliberately that incinerates everything within the radius, which is vast. And so this unleashed that whole era of the, right, during the Cold War, when Soviets and the United States were in that mad race for the supremacy in terms of that power. But what is remarkable here is that atomic bomb itself, as an idea that was brought to manifestation, was the fruit of the actuality of the quantum physics delivering. So in other words, what was spoken purely in hypothetical terms, theoretical terms, becomes a reality. It's one and the only example that was brought into manifestation where quantum physics delivers. Do you understand? Everything else today, every breakthrough is made with the continuation of the Newtonian science, more or less, with some cross-pollination that there inevitably takes place in the realm of, let's say, photons, the laser technology, that I was given a brief breakthrough, like crash course by a scientist who got very quickly taken to the United States. One of the, not many of you know that, but there was this famous case of 100 great scientists. At the collapse of the Soviet Union, as you know, Soviet Union had very strong tradition of scientists, very strong one. So 100 scientists were all whisked from the collapse of the Soviet Union into Great Britain, and most of them ended up in the United States. So one such family, Vodopyanov, was on his way. He was actually working already for the government in England, and then they just gave him an offer he would not refuse, and he was working in laser technology. So, and I got to know the family very well. We even celebrated, like when he was away, his wife was with us for Christmas and New Year. And so we had some brilliant exchanges because he was also deeply into spirituality. He was reading the work of Gurdjieff and very much into Krishnamurti in the whole family. So he was also, we had these discussions in terms of how these parallel veins, that there is a theoretical science, which is quantum physics, and the science that is, as it were, implemented into technological breakthroughs. But the reality of the situation is that even though we're reaching the, let's say, unbelievable results in terms of the modern day technology, the actuality of the situation is such that the quantum realm is not being explored. See? And yet the quantum realm override, is it correct English? Override, but overrode. The quantum realm overrode, the quantum science overrode everything that was done prior to that. Completely. So this is why the antagonism in the scientific community continues, because somehow quantum physics began to be associated with the mumbo-jumbo of the New Age. This is where the fear of a lot of scientists that their work would be dismissed because of its very tight associations. So this is saying that let's talk about vibrations. And everything is vibrations. Everything is sound, pure sound, frequencies. Everything is frequency. Everything is a shimmering pool of sound. We could say even everything is shimmering pool of light and sound. And this is where the confluence of what perhaps could be considered as the cherry on the cake of all that India has to offer, with the Shaivism as that extraordinary, let's say, summation of everything best that was available, speaks to, because in addition to what we have touched upon just briefly yesterday when we spoke about one of its principal doctrines, which is mainly, now let us define it slightly more in a scholarly terms. So the Pratyabhijna Hridayam, right, the theory of recognition, it's simply known as such in English language, the doctrine of recognition, Pratyabhijna Hridayam, the doctrine of recognition. Break down that Sanskrit term is a recognition in the heart. That is a more, let's say, over Shiva-based approach. It's from the perspective of Shiva, the perspective of awareness, instantaneous recognition, because that's what it is. When we will speak about modes of perception, of which we spoke, I believe, really in great detail in Germany at the live immersion, 10-day live immersion, which was then converted into online course because that was suggested by our team members. It wasn't my idea. And we offered that course. It's currently available, called Spanda. And that's what the second most known doctrine, that is what Kashmir Shaivism is known for. Spanda is what here stands for the theory of vibration, or doctrine of vibration. So, doctrine of vibration, that Spanda, and quantum physics is where that confluence taking place, because according to doctrine of vibration, which has an authoritative text known as Spanda Karika, everything is a frequency, everything is a vibe, everything is a result of some sort of tremor, of some kind of quiver, at the infinitesimally refined level. And of course, esoterically spoken of the quiver at the heart of awareness, the quiver at the heart of Shiva. So there is this, what gives the propensity for being to become, or rather for being to enter the mode of becoming. So this being and becoming, if any of you are familiar with some of the works of, let's say, some of the sages who introduce this in another modality, another dimension, whether you read the work of Sri Aurobindo or someone like the Sufi tradition, Hazrat Inayat Khan, who even wrote a beautiful book on music. He was a musician, he was an accomplished player, sitar, I believe, Amir Sarangi, string instruments. He was an accomplished player, and he wrote this beautiful book where he gave this profound insight on the connection between spirituality, the cosmos, and the music, how that all is one, the expression of the other. Everything here is a musical tonal expression. So the whole universe vibrates at the level of certain scales, tones. And these scales are there at all times. So in other words, at every level of creation, there are these vibratory scales at every level. And this creation is then expressed through human physiology down through the nervous system with its spine, where each of the 33 vertebrae represent a particular tonality, tone, particular pitch, particular note. So in other words, the whole creation is seen not as just haphazard, random appearance, where this is illusion, where this is real. This is now another conversation. The whole creation is seen as that shimmering pool of sound, but not just chaotic shimmering pool of sound. It's orchestrated sound. The sound is orchestrated. There is this vibratory power that inherently comes from the source of it all, and the source of it all in Shiva, where that reality of absolute becomes the reality of manifested plane, or all the manifested planes of creation have these musical tonalities. So if we are to look into this, that's where the confluence really taking place. Maybe it wasn't spoken about it in terms of music when it comes to quantum physics. But certainly when it comes to the realm of verifying all these propositions and ideas that followed immediately, starting with Niels Bohr as the father of quantum mechanics, and followed by immediately Albert Einstein and the myriad of these brilliant young physicists, and then all the way to someone like David Bohm, who was the student of Niels Bohr, but disagreed profoundly with what he saw as too sterile, too clinical, too technical approach to the physics, and he felt that since the breakthrough is complete and utter from the mechanical universe of the Newtonian universe, then we cannot discard, let's say, such notions as compassion, empathy, love. In other words, he was the first physicist who suddenly introduced this, and this is where it started to get mindling, because people just signed him off completely. They wrote him off. They thought he's gone mad, or at least became foolish, because he was very brilliant, promising. Not promising is not even the right word. He was a brilliant scientist who potentially faced an illustrious career for him, ahead of him. Instead, he meets Krishnamurti, that Jiddu Krishnamurti, gets enamored, has this heart connection, abandons all his research, abandons all his academic career, and starts doing this one trip after another to India, and converse with Krishnamurti on various topics of consciousness. So we can see this trajectory, and we can see this also why people still destroy, let's say, everything that someone like Deepak Chopra does, because Deepak Chopra speaks that language, and Deepak Chopra is a trained physician. He is a scientist, endocrinologist, but he's not taken seriously in any domain because he is considered to be belonging to that mumbo-jumbo of the New Age. So whenever he speaks something, and this is not just addressed to the tight, more insulated spiritual community, but meant to be for everyone, it is met with tremendous degree of skepticism, criticism, and dismissal. And we can see that why that is, because it started already much earlier, much, much earlier. But the fact remains intact, that the fact that quantum understanding of how things are, though remaining at the theoretical level and yet to be applied, it is what is really at the very blueprint or at the core of what's happening in terms of the life of the universe, and therefore lives of all its creatures, all its beings. So this is why we have entered this time of transition, we could say, where a lot of these understandings are flying around, some of it making sense because people have direct insights, experiences, and these experiences cannot be dismissed on the account of imagination. So that from the butterfly effect to miraculous healings, that everything, that butterfly effect, right? Butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil and causes hurricane in China, something like that, right? That this understanding is that not that everything is interconnected, but everything is interconnected at the level where what we have considered small, big, local, non-local begins to get, let's say, the contours of that begin to get more and more blurred. So the near or far is but a concept which belongs to a certain level of reality. In order to come here, we had to board the plane in Europe. So we traveled through space. So yes, that's undeniable. But the experience that is available to human being directly, whether this is intellectual, mental, emotional experience, let alone subtler experiences, do not travel through space-time. They are instantaneous. It's enough to think of a person whom we know, whom we have deep connection, and instantaneously we affect the field of that being there and then, instantaneously, not 7 minutes or whatever is it, how long it takes, 10 minutes of having the setting sun in the retina, whilst in fact the sun is already set. So the light travels to be perceived at the speed of light, subject to the distance between the planet Earth and the sun. So in other words, we never see the sun. It's like the story with the people who never read the newspapers unless it is 30-day old. So in other words, if we are scientifically wired too much, we might lament, freak, and never actually see the sun. All I see is whatever happened afterwards, sun is gone, I'm constantly catching up. None of that. Instantaneous. Simultaneous. So vibrations, everything is that. Everything is in a constant state of vibration. So therefore this realization meant to be a very helpful one, because it's then becomes clearer that everything is subject to frequencies. Every state we experience is a subject of frequencies. Everything, every single thought, every single emotion, feeling is but a frequency. And these frequencies, our whole being, the field, let's say our auric field, our field that gives us the sense of that lightness of being, if you will, that joy of being alive, is all constantly influenced by the frequencies that we tuned in whilst at the very same time produce. You see? So in other words, it would be half the story to suggest that we only tune in, because then it would make us into some kind of antenna. It will make us into some kind of receptacles, that there is this vibration somehow, and we tune into them, which there is a great deal of truth to that, that there are spheres of existence. There are spheres in the atmosphere of planet Earth. There are spheres where the different creatures abide. These different creatures who take care of these different realms. This may be dismissed to be a New Age mambo-jumbo or a religious kind of superstition. But it is a reality of quantum domain, that it is so. It is measurable because every frequency is today already measurable. There are waves, and that's how science speaks about it. The language of the science does not operate with the words as vibrations or frequencies. This is more, let's say, a spiritualized approach to speak about it. The scientists speak about it in terms of waves, and waves are measurable. And everything has waves, everything. Planet Earth emits electromagnetic waves that are measurable, mathematically equationable. The planet Jupiter emits electromagnetic waves. The moon emits electromagnetic waves, and so is the sun. Everything emits electromagnetic waves, which are an expression also of a particular quality, whether this is a helio as the main element, what makes the sun into what it is, or, let's say, pure, compressed, compacted metal, as in the case with Mercury, planet Mercury. So everything here is in that extraordinarily orchestrated manner of things in terms of its correlation. But one way or another, these are waves. So these waves are there, and the waves belong here, or rather the realms of these beings, which now we're touching as an intro, that tentatively the topic of that immersion itself. Why we live in time when we cannot have spirituality bleached, sanitized, deprived of, reduced to a clinical approach of your awareness, that's it, you're free to go. You know, it like this kind of very clinical approach, it's the same kind of mechanical understanding of the universe, but now being implemented into spiritual work. Whereas the understanding here that if all these are frequencies, endless waves, myriad of waves, orchestrated sound, music of the spheres, then we begin to tap into something that one can be in the tune of it all, or one can be out of sync with it, of that harmony. One can be in sync with what the music is here and hear the melody of creation, or tap into that melody of creation at will, one can forever be felt as if deprived of these vibrations, left dry of all that. And the world of these realms, or the inhabitants of these realms, is inseparable from the realm itself. So if we are to delve into, let's say, some of the, indeed, metaphysical and esoteric, yes, expositions within great religions, let's say Christianity in this case, the realm of the spheres of the angelic realm has the hierarchy of the influence. They're not just all kind of cherubims with the same wings and flying around like birds, and no. They all have their respective realm. And that realm is subordinate on the account of its subtlety. The more subtle, the more profound, and the more powerful. Some of these realms are in direct interaction, let's say, with the so-called earthlings, because that's what their job is, that's what their assignment. Others are at a further periphery because they hold the cosmic tension intact at a different level of creation. And all these structures today are deprived from direct communion and offering one way or another because of our overly or overtly rationalized approach to everything, including spirituality. We want clear-cut understanding. We want a rational understanding. We want to end up with a clean-cut, okay, that's how things are, and we want to walk away with that. You see? But the relationship here is much, much more integral. Relationship here is never clear-cut. Relationship here is that harmony. That harmony, this is Mstislav Rostropovich, who I was blessed to be neighbor of, picking up that cello and plays at the age of his at the end of his 80s. Why? Why would the great maestro play instrument? That is for you to answer this question. Why would someone do anything if they think they've done it? They're good at it. So, apparently, guess what? Because it's selfish to have an expensive instrument and not play it. Ha! That's what Slava told me. Mstislav he was introducing himself Slava, very democratically. He's an extraordinary man, just another dropping of the name. He's the greatest performer of the 20th century. Mstislav Rostropovich. Why he is a legend? Well, I'll tell you why. 3 greatest composers wrote for him to perform. Dmitri Shostakovich wrote for him. Schnitke wrote for him. And Elgar wrote for him. I mean, that doesn't get more than that. 3 great composers of the 20th century wrote in view of thinking how that musician will perform their music. That's what Mstislav Rostropovich was, as a cello player, until he became a conductor and the teacher, of course, of music. So, asking why he would play, right, in that triangular communal garden in Randolph Crescent he lived, and I lived on Randolph Avenue in Maida Vale of London. Because if you have instrument like that, it's selfish to not to play it, you see. I'm translating because in Russian actually it sounds really fun with that, with the pun as well, like that. This. Well, like if you have Stradivarius and you're not playing it, what the heck you doing? right? And people collect guitars, Stratocaster, like, oh, Eric Clapton played on it, Strat, they call it short. Big deal, play it. It's not to be, it wasn't created to be on a wall. They meant to be, dun, 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 right? Vibrations, again, see? These are vibrations. These are each string touched, on the bass lane, the smoke on the water is a classic. Every kid learned to play guitar would have to go through that riff. It's canonized, it's iconic. It's better than Stairway to Heaven. Better than anything. It's like Led Zeppelin, yeah, when you're in school, when you're in a university, when you like on this. But when you graduate, you know that there was a heavier stuff to reckon with. So, deeper shades of purple. So vibrations, again, vibrations. Now, before we completely lost the plot, or if we might have already did, and it will make sense to simply carry on with that, realms, these realms are here, and they're there. The whole realm, this is what the universe, this walking universe, see? Walking universe, just as Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, with all that hundreds of meditators and the courses, profoundly transformative, let's say, this advanced course introduced and gathered together, and I've been told it was Salisbury, probably, Switzerland, I don't know. Maybe Gail remembers that. And will correct me. He met the graduates of the course and he's just asked into the audience, so who is walking universe? Like, who is feeling like a walking universe? See? So from that, who is walking universe, to Deepak Chopra's and Menas Kafata's collaborative effect, you are the universe, the book they co-authored together. Or Dr. Joe Dispenza's You Are Placebo. See? So there's no such thing like there's universe and there's a human being. There's a placebo effect. No, you are placebo. You are universe, walking universe. Why? Well, that's why. Because as above, so is below. And it's interconnected, interlinked, and one propagates the other. So if some of these superstructures are not propagated, we are forced to live at the superficial level. And when we live at the superficial level for too long, suffering begins. And the sufferings begins to spill from individual level into the collective. And when the collective level begins to experience this unbearable amount of suffering, it breaks into calamities, famines, wars, cataclysmic events. These sufferings begin to multiply because everything is now out of sync. Out of sync. Only one level of reality is being propagated. It's fantastic to have all this and this and that. Yes, of course, we can criticize McDonald's, we can criticize Coca-Cola, because it's a universe within the universe, isn't it? It's an event in consciousness. Coca-Cola is not just Coca-Cola. It's part of culture. Yes, there is soccer, there's football. There's this, that. All this is alive and kicking. There is a lot of converted hearts and minds. There is a lot of that. What is affected, infected, converted. But what about these structures that are intermediate structures? These structures where these realms receive offerings? When these structures are left bereft of these offerings, something lapses. So these intermediate, let's say, intermediaries, they don't know what their job is anymore. Allegorically speaking. These angels, these subtle realms, these impulses of creative intelligence, They begin to complain to the Creator. We don't know what to do. Humans don't care anymore. They fly around on planets. They think planets are to land on. They think planets are an alternative for doing something. They're still confused. God, why have you created them in your own image but didn't give them the brain of yours? What's wrong with you, Maestro? And of course, God is very, very wise and very, very, very gray and very long beard and very Michelangelo-esque. And don't worry, guys. It's okay. Time will come. They'll wisen up. That's why I placed them there. Just want to see how they can figure it out themselves. Or something else is going on. See? Or something else is going on. So let's introduce another topic which we will return to, like just as a footnote. Maybe the connection between man and God is much more elusive than we have ever thought. Maybe it's much more incomprehensible than we have ever thought. Maybe the relationship is such that in order for, wow, no way. No, that could not be. Is it even? No, speaking of the cliffhanger. Is it possible that God is unconscious unless he is fully formed as human? Is it possible that we can even interpret the story of Jesus in a very different manner altogether? What if only in the being of human that awareness is becoming fully aware? What if it's here where things are settled, where what is otherwise densely covered by unconscious, even if it's godly unconscious, are here given chance to become fully conscious? Maybe this is the meaning of us being placed here, to find our destiny. Let's maybe tackle this and return to that on another day, because we don't want to just give it it's not to jump through. So one way or another, going back to this way we have started, vibrations, frequencies, realms, why invocations are important, why it's not enough just to do things, business as usual, why invoking something is offering that what otherwise cannot be offered in the physical realm. Why an act of offering in the first place? State of the heart. Something has to happen at that level. Something needs to move there, something needs to vibrate there, something needs to run through the heart. Something which will give that possibility for instantaneous attunement. And if it's true that as within, so without, as above, so below. So if this attunement is momentarily here, touched that level of creation, then that level of creation is touched everywhere. That whole concept of locality is gone. So just in one single heart, one single individual, something happens and it impacts the entire creation. This is where we ought to gain confidence. That's where we ought to gain clarity. So we don't just somehow stumble in the gray area of whether this is at all has any meaning. whether this is at all has any impact. So the frequencies, waves, these waves, waves upon waves upon waves. So if the direct recognition is covered by that more Shaivite, more Shiva-based in terms of its approach, exemplified by the doctrine of recognition, then the doctrine of vibration here is another unique offering that Kashmir Shaivism is known for. Because the doctrine of Spanda does not have the same, let's say, perspective on the goal. The goal here not so much in that recognition, the emphasis is placed here on the quiver. The emphasis placed here on the vibratory power of awareness, which is always one with awareness. So that's what we spoke of as these spheres of creation, starting with Mallorca and then concluding it in Germany at the Good Soundstuff early this year. And we will get back to this as well here, so as to give that, even if in brief, that kind of exposition. But this doctrine of Spanda doesn't have a concluding goal. It's simply to live in the frequency, live in that throb, where one can access the ultimate nature of one's reality. Through any experience, once one becomes familiar with what that here represents by that quiver at the heart of Shiva. And that is understood to be, or spoken of again from scholarly perspective, as more Shakta-based perspective. Because it utilizes the power here. The emphasis is on the power, because Spanda here equals Shakti. That quiver at the heart of Shiva is the vibratory power which gives the universe the impetus to spring forth in all its glory. So this is, let's say, if we are to give the introduction to the doctrine of Spanda, the doctrine of vibration. Let's give this a slightly different perspective now, a different angle from what we talked about yesterday, right? So let's say this would represent that Bindu, right? Bindu, which will again stand for pure category of Shiva. And okay. And another Bindu here. So what we have here is, imagine, like, you know, that this spiral rings made for kids to walk down the stairs. I don't know if there's a few parents here. Clinky. Slinky. Slinky. So it's like slinky, you know, it's like you could put it together, right? So it's in compact mass. And then you release, and you hold at one end, and it just goes all the way down, right? Under the gravity, under the force of gravity. So it goes, spirals out, you know, just. And then there is this counter movement as it reaches that point, and then under the energy that is inherent in the spiral, it will be prompted to go up. And imagine if we have such slinky, if we have slinky made in such a way that it goes up all the way, right? Not just halfway, but it goes like all the way out and all the way in. Maybe we can, like when we kind of, maybe we can even create a prop like that, or commission a company to give us that, like to. So this will give us this. So all this, right? All this is the domain of Shakti. All that energy of unfoldment is Shakti. You see? So the static quality of Shiva here is complemented by the kinetic quality of Shakti. See? So I'm not even writing it down here because all this is the domain of Shakti. With these movements, it's all down to the power of Shiva, the power of awareness. And that ultimate point where that slinky, that uncoiled spiral reaches, is marked by that what we spoke in the equilateral, remember yesterday? Shiva, Shakti, Nara, right? Represents by, it stands for Nara. I'm using this Sanskrit term for you, simply it paying tribute to tradition, but in your own sketches you can simply put the world or individual, because they are not only synonymous, world and individual are belonging to the objective sphere of experience. So you see, eternal subject, eternal object. Shiva becomes individual through the power of its own unfoldment. As Shiva unfolds as the universe, he progressively loses all these qualities, and the major qualities are lost at the very first, let's say, area, which will be represented by first sphere, where the first limitations come into place. All the omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient qualities, including that of beyond space-time, which is what awareness is, what absolute is, there and then, as it were, sacrificed. See? Sacrificed. So already all these qualities of the beyond space, beyond time, beyond temporality, beyond all this, is sacrificed. In Sanskrit, they're spoken of as 5 kanchukas, 5 coverings. Because by the time awareness or absolute will gain the experience which is spoken and intimately experienced by all of us, it needs to be complete and utter and real. This experience needs to be real. It cannot be just like, half Shiva, half individual. It's like, no, you can't have your cake and eat it too, because Shiva knows that. So it's like, I'll have to forgo all my Shiva if I want to experience really what's going on. If I want to experience how infinite I am, because if I'm only a compact mass of consciousness, if I'm infinity, how do I know I'm infinite? See? And yeah, I have to become finite. How do I know? How can now you can just like come up with your own understanding. Everything is experienced only on the account of its opposite. when you're really thirsty, I mean really thirsty, but really thirsty, water tastes better than any beverage. It tastes better than any soda, any Japanese tea, anything you can imagine, any drink, any best wine, when you're really thirsty, isn't it not? A pure taste of water is proverbial when you're thirsty. Likewise with everything else. Every experience here, no matter how minute, has this structure intact. So this collapse continues, of course, and goes into different spheres, right? And we will emphasize the three principal ones here. The pure, pure in sense of pure tattvas, pure categories. This is all the domain of beyond manifestation. This is a realm of pure tattvas, pure categories. Okay? Then comes the realm of psychic categories, and let's just call that. Okay? So this is the realm of psychic categories. And this is the realm of manifested plane of creation. So that would be the realm of physical categories. See? Pure, psychic, and physical. Physical here would have the full structure of creation, all the elementary order, all of it. And psychic, where all the templates are created intact. Because all this is cascading down in that manner. See? All this is cascading down in the manner of undergoing continuous and perpetual transformation. Of course, this is given a linearity of understanding of that. Bindu here represented as the quality of Shiva itself, where everything is a compacted mass of light and sound. This is the domain that in the spiritual anatomy is spoken of as Bindu Visarga, right? The Bindu Visarga, this is the fontanel of the head. Why Visarga? Visarga because it's the point of emission. The term Visarga, point of emission. It is from here the universe begins to emit. Or rather, Absolute begins to emit out of its own plenitude, the plenitude of creation. And Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purna, so forth. All that, what we sing, is that. What is unique from the point of view of Shaivite's philosophy, the Kashmir Shaivism philosophy, what is unique here as a perspective, is that something extraordinary is taking place here. Please be attentive, just 5 more minutes, and then we'll break. Extraordinary taking place. Although at this level of creation, and in our next gathering, we'll do the drawings of what we did earlier, to create 5 spheres, right? From the will of Vamishwari to the will of Bukhari, from the will of, let's say, absolute categories where they all get contracted, these kanchukas, to the will, the outmost will of the earthly plane of creation. We'll give this perspective. So imagine, in other words, this is looking at this from here, right? It's just as simple as that. We'll just give that an additional point of view. But as we speak about this, although here awareness, absolute, imposes on itself these so-called coverings, these kanchukas, it has to begin to limit all these most important qualities that absolute is called absolute in the first place. They are 5. all of them are these qualities that are lost. You see? Only after that self-sacrificial act is performed, then the sphere of psychic categories can begin to form templates for the physical reality of universe. Is that clear? But guess what's happening here? At least according to the philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism, which is a unique perspective compared to most of all other systems existing or came from India. Whilst Absolute undergoes this progressive descent, which is accompanied by continued and unstoppable cascading down of tattvas from pure to psychic to physical, right? Tattvas, categories. Tat, that. Tat, that. At no point, Shiva's quality is diminished. At absolutely no point in all this descent, the quality of Shiva is diminished in terms of its principle, aspect of I am. This I-ness. Everything that you experience is a confirmation of your atta and entire identity with who you are. Everything, absolutely everything, irrespective of likes, dislikes, horror, beauty, terrifying, beatific. I am the one who is experiencing it. I here and I here only differ in terms of its contracting qualities. But the quality itself does not undergo change. The light in the candle is the same light that is the sun, but it's just a size, we could say, a scope. Maybe this is not even such a strong example. We can look into this by getting another example. Every individual, if it's possible, if it was possible, because guess what? It's not possible. This is another thing. If it was possible for us to pick and isolate a single ray of sun, right? A single ray, then that ray of the sun is identical with the light that sun emits, is it not? Each single ray of sun is identical with all the other rays. So that identity of individual with absolute remains intact. And that's why there is this self-proclamation that is spoken of in terms of conscious, courageous, audacious declaration expressed in the saying of Shivoham. I am Shiva. Shivoham. This is in Kashmir Shaivism, is similar to the, let's say, Vedic great sayings, if you are familiar with those that have been formulated by Adi Shankara, like Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Atma, Brahma, all the rest of it. Shivoham. This is an admonition of the fact that I am Shiva, irrespective of the state of affairs of what is now being experienced at the level of where Shiva imposed that self-limitation for the sake of this experience to take place. You see, this is what and why it is spoken of as secret supreme or a truly integral teaching. Because At no point here is being said that this is real, or this is half real, and this is unreal. Or this is a mistake, this is not real. Only this is real. This is that is this, and all there is to it. Basta. Full stop. Period. You get it? Fantastic. It's yours because it was always yours. No one take it away. No one could. You don't get it? Fantastic, because that's the power of Shiva, to still secretly enjoy itself and complain. So all this, all this is nothing other than waves, frequencies, see? Frequencies, waves. All these are waves, waves of creation. From here it will be like pulsating, pulsating reality, pulsating. From the epicenter from myself. I emit myself and withdrew, emit and withdrew, emit and withdrew. I give birth to reality, and all reality is reabsorbed back into myself. So this could be touched, could be viscerally experienced, tactile. Sometimes you can get up, and you get up like a mountain, like Hanuman, because Hanuman, as a mythical creature in the pantheon of Hindu deities, was the son of Prana. That's why he was stronger than any incarnations of Vishnu. That's why he was stronger than the brothers. He's the one who brought the mountain. Remember the story? I love that story. Rama was sick. There needed to be something. He was wounded, deeply wounded. He's lying down. He's struck down by the son of the demon Ravana, Indrajit. To recover, there needs to be herb, certain herb that only grows in Himalayas on a particular mountain. So Hanuman zooms there from Lanka, but on the way forgets the name of the herb, or the way it looks. So he identifies the mountain and takes the whole mountain and brings it to make sure that he delivers what is brought. See? He's the one who leaped from the continent of India to Lanka. This is what Hanuman is, as a power of prana. He's the son of prana. Why am I speaking about this? Is that in the course of your sadhana, there are experiences when one goes through all this unloading, all this. But there must be areas of all this where we grew in size internally. And you have to mark this and to claim this, not to be afraid of this. You see? It's not just about unloading from the accumulated stresses, metabolizing all these traumas, reincorporating them back into the awareness, the fabric of your consciousness. But these powers are there. Sometimes you feel tired, this and that. Physiology always takes precedence. This is no doubt, absolutely. But what available in meditations is touching that level, any of these levels. So that's why we thought we'll give the talk today to the fact that everything is that. Vibe, everything is a vibration, vibe. So it feels fitting. Let's make sure that these vibes are bueno. Okay?